Thank you so very much for that warm welcome. Really, the applause belongs to you for being together to socialize and learn this afternoon on this beautiful New York afternoon. And good afternoon, whether you are joining us virtually from all over the world or in person here in New York City. We are so excited to be with you. I'm Janet Wu, a Bloomberg anchor and reporter based in Boston, where I interview the entrepreneurs, the investors, and the CEOs of that innovation hub. I'm excited to host this presentation on modernization, architecting the future of your business. Building an environment that creates value while maintaining innovation and security is a really tall order, but it's an imperative for all companies that need to compete. Success means managing the complexity of multiple platforms with tech solutions to prepare for the future, a future that also demands a green footprint. And this requires recruiting and retaining talent who can thrive in these ever-evolving situations and environments. Among the topics that we will explore today in pretty short order to be efficient with your time, creating tech-enabled innovation to move organizations forward fast without introducing high levels of risk. We'll also look at the big challenge all companies are facing, how to attract and maintain talent to build these solutions. Again, hiring is one thing, keeping this talent is also another big challenge. Before we get started, a few items for our audience, you here in the room and all over the world. For our virtual attendees, if you experience any problems with your audio or video quality, please try the simple things first. Just try refreshing your browser. You can also use the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen for support throughout this event. We have partnered with Wordly, an audio-to-text platform, to transcribe our discussions in real time to make this event more accessible. And you can access Wordly via the link in the session description. We want this to be interactive as we learn together, so we would love to hear from you throughout the program. To submit questions virtually, please click open the white tab on the right side of your video window. And for those of you here in the room, you can submit questions by simply scanning the QR code on the cards that are on your tables. Please also engage with us on social media. We are being modern after all. You can just use our hashtag #RethinkModern. I would like to acknowledge our sponsor, IBM, for making this conversation possible. And with that, I'd like to invite Jamie Thomas, General Manager, Systems Development, Delivery, and Enterprise Security at IBM, to the stage to make a few opening remarks.
Thank you, Janet, and thanks to all of you for joining us here on a beautiful afternoon in New York City. I was worried about the rain, but it is not here, so that's great. I think you're all here because you're really interested in this topic, modernization and charting the future for your business. Let's say that we're all pleased to take advantage of the productivity and the increased business outcomes that we've attained over the last few years from many of these new modern architectures, but I think we all expect as well operational resilience, fidelity, and we expect to have data security and privacy. And so one of the things I'll focus on a little bit more in my comments is this topic of security. Security has become a front and center topic, even more so in the last couple of years, as we've continued to see ransomware at a rate and pace, steady rate and pace. Now the average event is over $4 million to remediate. And we've also seen some very clever software supply chain attacks, starting with SolarWinds a couple of years ago and followed by Log4j in December. So these events have spurred governments, including the US government, to think about how do we protect ourselves, how do we secure industry, and what kind of regulation do we perhaps need to encourage organizations. So that's why this is such an important topic. I look forward to engaging with you on this and this entire agenda, if you will, around modernization and charting the course for the future. Thanks again for attending.
We promised to be efficient with your time, so we are going to dive right in. Our first panel looks at how 3 companies are conquering the dual challenges of mass relocations and resignations, while they also need to build a workforce that can adapt to rapidly changing technology. So please join me in welcoming Joe Gimigliano, Vice President and Chief Technology Officer for the Mount Sinai Health System, Nicole Brown, Senior Vice President, People and Culture at Mediaocean, and John Napoli, Head of CTO and CDO and Execution at JPMorgan Chase. So as you can tell already, we have some pretty incredible executives from 3 very diverse industries. So what I'd like to do is first ask the 3 of you just a bit about what you do, basically what has to go right every day in your role and what can't go wrong. So Joe, we know that Mount Sinai Health System keeps people healthy. Can you give us an idea of how many people are in that ecosystem and how large of a workforce is needed?
Sure. So we have about 45,000 employees in the New York City area, operating out of 8 major hospitals, servicing about 3 to 4 million outpatients per year, several hundred ambulatory sites, several thousand medical students, and a vibrant research community.
And Nicole, tell us about Mediaocean, what it does and what you do.
Absolutely. So Mediaocean is the leading advertising software provider for the advertising industry. We empower media brands and agencies and advertisers to manage their campaigns on a global basis. We have about 1,700 employees globally, and I have the honor and privilege to manage all people operations, including diversity, equity, inclusion, and learning and development.
Thank you so much. And John, we know what JPMorgan does, from asset management to our mortgages. Can you give us an idea of the current size of the JPMorgan's global workforce?
Sure. So we're about 250,000 people along the workforce. Within technology, where I sit, we're about 55,000 in total, about a $14 billion tech budget. And so what I do is I'm the COO for our Chief Technology Office and our Chief Data Office firm-wide.
So I think that you have the distinction of having the largest workforce of the companies on this stage. So let me begin by asking you, what workplace challenges are you addressing with modernization?
Yeah, I think 2 of the biggest things we're seeing now and we're focused on is, one, around taking a lot of our proprietary systems and moving them to more modern systems, specifically SaaS-based solutions, as it relates to kind of internal employees, focused on things like HR, CRM, service management. In addition, I talked about the size of our IT workforce being about 55,000. We have about 40,000 software engineers, and the software engineers span the entire organization. So a lot of what we're doing is automating their roles and the responsibilities they have day to day in order to improve that experience. And so if I think about, well, a couple more things. So I think about software engineering. Through automation, we've actually realized about a 20% improvement in terms of new features being rolled out quicker, and about a 10% productivity across our software engineers.
Joe, we know that healthcare, anything related to healthcare, requires a massive workforce, a lower ratio between the service providers and your, for lack of a better word, customer. And you have to have a workforce that can address their needs. Where have you seen the greatest impact on using tech for modernization in workforce efficiency?
Sure. I think we're all facing the same challenges with it's hard to find talent out there. We've got a scarce talent pool, and holding on to people is a challenge. And there's far more demand than there is supply to be able to take care of all the work. And there's a lot of what we call soul-crushing work, back office administrative tasks that just are demoralizing. It's things that everyone wished that they could get off their plate. So we've been focused on some of those tasks, like back office tasks, whether it's in the supply chain, the receipts, looking at invoicing, receipt matchups. If you look at all the inventory associated with medication, there's a tremendous amount of workflow and manual tasks associated with the physical aspects of that. So automating as much of the receipt matching. In the HR space, there's just a number of activities like that we just need to create more capacity in order to try to meet the challenging supply-demand equation.
Very quickly, follow-up question. We know that a lot of healthcare jobs, as you mentioned, are soul-crushing because you can't really manage the hours. Is there one position that you think would benefit the most or you would like to see automated?
Yeah, I think all the work required to bring new people on board if I think about the nurses and the folks on the front lines servicing our patients, making it super easy to bring on new people and avoid some of the manual tasks associated with that, I think would be a great win for us. And we are focused in that space, and we need to accelerate our efforts there.
Nicole, we tend to think of advertising, especially digital advertising, is very exciting, fun, creative, but it also comes with the jobs that can be tedious.
Right.
Within your organization, what job would you like to see automated?
Oh, I'd love to build on what Joe was saying. A lot of our operational work in terms of HR administration or benefits administration, there's so many of those routine tasks that are repetitive that are ripe for automation. You know, if we were able to better tap into some of those tasks and create workflows for that, we'd enable our team members to be better focused on people analytics and wellness and really thinking about how to understand our workforce trends and be more effective and better enablers to the business.
John, we were talking about your global workforce, 250,000 people. That's massive. That also means you have a lot of customers. We know that the best tech solutions tend to run almost hidden, that the customer doesn't see this. Can you tell us how technology solutions have helped JPMorgan, which also requires a lot of customer service, create a more seamless relationship with the customer and also with your own workforce?
Yeah, so a lot of what we're focused on in modernization these days is around refactoring our applications and moving them to the public cloud as an example. And so we see a ton of benefits as it relates to those moves, specifically both internally and externally. So one of the big things we've done this year was move Chase.com primarily to the public cloud. By end of year, we should be fully on the public cloud, and we have about 60 million clients. I think we have, I'm trying to think, about 11 billion logins a year. And so as we've done that move, we've seen a ton of benefit for our end clients. So stability, we have about 99.99% availability. Internally, we've saved about 50% in terms of operational cost. And in terms of managing the platform, it's much more consistent, and so it's much easier to manage.
This is a good time to bring in an audience question, a very good one that we just received. The migration to the cloud, a lot of people are employing AI, and you also have to guard the data. So this question, how can we make sure the AI systems are secure and the data is secured?
Oh, for me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so AI is become pervasive in a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So many of us don't realize just how much of our world is driven by AI. Firms like ours are heavily invested in that, and AI data is kind of the key input to that. So we have something like, I think it's 500 petabytes of data. A little bit of a weird stat, but it's about 25,000 years of high-definition video, to give you some kind of context. So protecting the data is really important, and part of it, though, it's always a balance. And so one of the things we focus on is from the beginning of the conversation to make sure that we're protecting our data. We have things like data use councils, making sure it's being leveraged in the right way. But in addition, there's a balance because you have to make sure that data scientists, whose job it is to take this data and to build hypotheses on this and look for analytical things that can help drive the business, have access to that in a timely way. So we spend a ton of time focused on that end-to-end journey, where people who are actually pulling out the data, then actually analyzing the data, then actually building models based upon that, and then serving it and monitoring it. And so looking at risk and control from end to end is really important.
One note, the clock is not running, so if people can give me time cues so I know where we are, these conversations to run very fast. And so if you could just let me know or start the clock running. Joe, you also have a data challenge because you are dealing with records, patient records, securing them. Those also have to go to the cloud. There is no way that the records of all the people that you serve can be in one computer. Again, how do you manage the security of our most private information?
Oh, it's paramount to protecting patient privacy. And if we think about the cloud and the infrastructure that the cloud is built on, we have strong partnerships with the major cloud providers to make sure that the foundation is there. We have some of the best security folks working together with the various department heads on data use councils, et cetera, to make sure that we understand the types of data, the level of access required to access the data. If data needs to be pulled out of the electronic medical record system, it's de-identified in a proper way so that the data scientists have the ability to do what they need to do in order to advance medical research, improve patient care, to do all the proactive things that we intend to do. But that is very paramount to ensuring patient privacy. So big focus of ours.
As we're talking about architecting the future, it's really amazing to think about the terms and the positions that we use now that we were not discussing 15 years ago. Data scientists and data use councils, which again, most companies are trying to form. Nicole, I want to ask you a question about the workforce and adopting technology, because we know, whether it's from ourselves or our parents trying to learn a new remote to a new system within a company, it's often met with hesitancy, at the least maybe fear or resistance. How do you have your colleagues buy into these new solutions and have faster adoption?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think from a tactical standpoint, the most important thing is to make sure you understand who the right stakeholders are. And once you have a good sense of who's going to be impacted by this new system or this new direction, you want to be more consultative in your approach. Really think about, what is it that we're trying to solve for? What is this solution actually impacting? And then once you have a good understanding of that, I like to take a more coordinated approach and work with marketing. Think about our communication strategy and really bake it into everything that we're doing, so people feel as though this is a new project, this is a new system, but there's some fun element to it as well. It's not this difficult thing that is now going to uproot what you're doing. And I think once you can tap into their motivation, what's going to bring additional autonomy, even a sense of purpose, for them, it creates a little bit more of a willingness to move along and support whatever this new system has been. And it's worked very well for us.
This has been a challenge for everyone, so I want to ask the same question to Joe and John as well. Let's start with Joe, because your challenge is you do have your workforce in one area, but these are also people that training their whole lives to save people, treat cancer. They are not thinking about tech solutions or the amount of time spent to adopt something. So how do you accomplish this?
Yeah, building on what Nicole is saying, change is difficult. And it's so critical where people are used to doing a certain process day in and day out a certain way. Introducing something new, even though there are benefits, they may not see it right away. So helping them understand how this will make their life easier is absolutely key. So having champions that are embedded within each of those organizations, being the champions and the voice for those groups where they are more intimately involved in the day-to-day and can channel the feedback up and down, sideways, is absolutely critical. And the partnerships there is important, because if anyone perceives this as a top-down, it's being done to me, as opposed to this is going to be beneficial for me, those changes never work. So having those champions across the organization and really listening to the feedback and acting on it is absolutely essential.
John, of course, JPMorgan Chase, different challenge with that massive workforce size, and they are not in one location, they are around the globe. And that means that different teams will never know perhaps what another team is learning. So that makes your role, managing any tech job within that size of a company, very challenging. How is that managed?
Yeah, so to your point, it is a huge change management problem. And so overall, I kind of think of two things. So one, transparency, and the second is training and simplification. So from a transparency perspective, to Nicole's point, you have to do a lot of marketing. And so that's marketing to the tech teams that are building things. That's marketing to the clients and the end stakeholders. And so a lot of that, the way we do that to make it really tangible is we actually will always kind of have a real use case where we rolled this stuff out originally. And a lot of that is proving it out. And then we'll take those use cases and those successes and we'll share those, because it becomes much more tangible for people to get their head around. And then built in, you have those champions for people who they could reach out to for assistance if they're going down that similar journey. As it relates to the training, as we do this change, and the rate of change is huge. You have to be actually very cautious about, do I change every single day? How often do I change? And so taking people along that journey, and I think of training in two ways. One, training them on the solution you roll out. And then secondly, we haven't talked about it a lot today, there is a push towards more low-code type solutions where people can actually do a lot of this automation themselves. And so some of what you're doing is you're training these individuals to actually do this change themselves. And so it's less of, I'm receiving this change by some outside force that's giving it to me and saying this is how to use it, versus, oh, I'm going to actually make this change myself, do my own automation, and then potentially leverage that throughout my organization.
We're coming down to about the last 7 minutes of the panel, so if you do have questions, please do submit them for us. I do want to ask all three of you now the big question that I introduced in the beginning. No matter what business you work in, what industry, the size of your company, everyone is having a challenge hiring people. Nicole, although you have the smallest company, the workforce, you're still managing a lot of people, and I know that you're always looking for people. How do you recruit and find the right people?
You know, we have to be very intentional. A lot of what we do focuses around our automation and our applicant tracking systems, really trying to figure out where do we get the most people who know the most about our brand. So we're very intentional, we're very data-driven, and we're out there. Not only are we attending events, we're also being thought partners. We organize events where leaders at our organization have an opportunity to showcase what we do. We really want people to understand and get excited about what sort of culture we have and what sort of development opportunities we have. And if we're just simply posting a role or an opening and not giving people a window into what makes Mediaocean unique and a place where people want to work, we're not as successful because we're not as large of a name. So we do a lot of work in trying to do our brand presence, but then bring people into what makes Mediaocean a special place to work.
Joe, of course, we all wish that we could clone, somehow create more doctors, nurses, technicians, because again, we are talking about life and death. It's not just a workforce shortage that's inconvenient. This is keeping people well and alive. How are you recruiting?
So we have our senior leaders that spend a lot of time community outreach and on the social media platforms, just trying to attract people who are interested in the purposeful mission-driven organization that we are, really focused on accelerating medical research and improving patient care. And there's a lot of people out there that have personal stories and connections. I was drawn to the personal nature of this organization. That's why I'm here today. And there's many people that share in the same story. And just like your personal networks, we rely heavily on people bringing in their colleagues. And there's a lot of merit to really tapping into that, employee referrals, et cetera, because the power of those networks coming into the organization is great.
Now, obviously, we can't upscale a doctor from someone who was working in IT, but John, within JPMorgan Chase, what we have been seeing with larger companies is that they've been forced to upscale current employees because they need to train for the jobs they can't hire. On the upside, it may result in a better workforce experience for them. Is JPMorgan doing a lot of this?
Yeah, 100%. And so those in technology, it's all about continuous learning. And so the way I think about our talent strategy overall, it's the way I think about it is 4 R's, right? So recruiting, retaining, retraining, which is a core piece, and also recognition. So from a recruiting perspective, we're always looking for a diverse workforce that, to your point, is very technical. A lot of the very highly newer technologies like AML, everything from quantum to public cloud to different things. From a retention perspective, we're very much focused on building an inclusive workforce. And as part of that, we do a lot of actual work around things like mentoring and sponsorship, and there's a lot in that space. From a retraining, to your question, that is huge, right? So we've just done something, a good example, we have something that's pretty public called DevUp. So recently within Texas, where we have a pretty large footprint, we actually brought about 500 of our software engineers, and we spent 3 days just focusing on retraining them on some of the newer technologies and talking as a software engineering community about the things we need to do going forward. And finally, around recognition, we think it's really important for our teams to be very visible and for people to understand they feel appreciated and that all the hard work is something that gets recognized throughout the organization.
I have a quick follow-up question for you. It was an audience question that brought up. It's a little bit too complex for us to fully address, but when it comes to new technologies, think about it. 10 years ago, the word cloud was still scaring a lot of people. It still scares people now, but we've slowly learned what it is. Someone was asking about the adoption of quantum, which is another word that a lot of people are finding. What the heck is that? You dropped the Q word. So is JPMorgan Chase working a lot in advancing quantum computing with
Yeah, so we have an organization called Applied Research, and we have a gentleman, a PhD, Marco Pistoia, who is one of the thought leaders in that space. And he has a team that is very much focused on both those spaces. So there's a lot of challenges that are coming up in quantum. So things like post-quantum cryptography or quantum key distribution, that are things that we like to be very forward-thinking on because we want to be prepared for when these are things that we need as an organization.
So looking at our panel here, healthcare, financial services, advertising, but basically are we saying that all companies now, pretty much all companies, have to be tech companies? Nicole, your thoughts?
I would say so. I mean, joining this organization, more than 17 years ago, I never thought I would be doing so much in technology and marketing, quite frankly, in a people and culture role, because so much of what we're doing is evolving. And if we want to be effective, we have to be data-driven. And to do that, you need the technology. You need to automate. You need to manage what you measure. And in order to do that, you need to ensure that all of these things are really operationalized within all of your functions. And this is the best way to essentially drive the business forward. So yeah.
All right, down to our final 2 minutes, and I want to ask a question that is a little bit difficult for us to digest, but it's a reality. Given the challenges of hiring, in your industries, do you think it is a reality that you will have to find a way to have continuity, work continuity, healthcare, financial services, advertising, with a smaller workforce than you had planned? Joe?
There's no doubt about it. There's no way to keep up with the demand and the accelerating pace of the demand using the same staff. So we can't scale the same way. So finding ways to do things easier and better is absolutely key. So looking at the work that we do, can we eliminate, can we simplify, can we automate what remains? That's absolutely essential. And I think it needs the upskilling, infuse some new talent into your organization to help through osmosis and help build up the group IQ is absolutely essential, and provide the necessary training. So we've done similar things to what John was describing with offering training for everyone, but you have to put it into use. And you have to have people with practical experience, and then that really, the power of raising the group IQ is really where we see the value.
John, in Boston, we saw so many financial services companies like Fidelity saying we have to hire 10, 15,000 more people because there were many more accounts that went online during the pandemic. They can't hire that many people. Same with the JPMorgan Chase. Are you trying to find ways to have the same sort of business continuity with customer service with a smaller workforce than you had desired or planned for?
Yeah, I think in general we have a decent size and scale, and so recently in our Investor Day this year and some of our financial conversations, we're trying to stay at a certain level of investment in the organization, and so it's all about how do we leverage those resources we have, which are ample, in the best way possible. And so many of us feel we have plenty of technologists, as an example, to actually do the job. Now, there's always going to be some certain amount of turnover and attrition and thus hiring, but we feel like what we're focused on very much now is how do we make the most of that? How do we do things like train the existing workforce? How do it get back to the kind of the 4 Rs? And how do we continue to, for us, the human capital is such a huge, important part of our organization. How do we leverage them best?
And finally, Nicole, short answer, I know that your business grows when you have more companies that are working with you. Right. Hopefully that's happening, but you need more people to help deal with them. Are you finding the same thing? You're needing to be creative in order to have your business grow.
Absolutely. We also have a big culture of learning at Mediaocean. We have 8 distinct programs that really support employees throughout their entire life cycle, from entry all the way to retirement with the organization. And because of that, our learning and development team focuses a lot of time on how do we think about providing new opportunities for people who maybe are not able to do some of the automation, right? So we create a lot of webinar series. We do a lot of boot camp training. We do a lot of things where our people are having an opportunity to shadow one another and get some of that on-the-job training that is maybe not as formalized as if they were learning outside of Mediaocean. So we provide that to them.
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking our panelists for sharing their insights. I hope you learned everything. Thank you so much. Please welcome back Jamie Thomas from IBM, the General Manager of Systems Development, Delivery, and Enterprise Security. She will be in conversation with Lauren Keel, General Manager of Bloomberg Green.
Thank you, Janet. Hello, everyone. And Jamie, welcome back to the stage. Thanks for joining me up here again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with everybody today.
I want to touch more on some of the themes that you raised in your welcome and introductory remarks there. You talked about the huge opportunities that the shift to cloud brings, that it's giving us opportunities for modernization, but also just improved performance, optimization. But that comes with a lot of challenges, as you raised. The cybersecurity threat is huge, and the implications and the challenges and the outcomes for that, if it goes wrong, could be incredibly costly. So tell us more about why is cybersecurity such a critical and challenging part of this transition to tackle?
Sure, Lauren. And one of the things I do at IBM is I run enterprise security for IBM, which means protecting the IBM organization. And every day we have 150 billion events that we sift through with a lot of artificial intelligence to figure out what we're going to respond to. And our view is you need to respond in less than 30 minutes, otherwise you're going to have a problem from a cyber attack. What this means is that the landscape of security has become more intense and more complicated. It means that we really need to think about the frameworks that we deploy as organizations, and we follow the NIST framework, and we strongly recommend that to our clients, which is identify, protect, detect, respond, and we operate in that fashion. We also have incorporated and instituted a very strong IT security policy, and this tells us, or dictates, if you will, how individuals within the organization should respond, the education that they're required to do, their personal actions. It dictates how we develop applications and how we make sure those applications are secure. It also outlines how we deal with suppliers, and it outlines further one of the more important things in the landscape today is how do we communicate internally to senior stakeholders, and how do we communicate to the board of directors and other organizations should something occur. So this framework, I think, is fundamental in ensuring that we have effective execution throughout the enterprise. When you look at the landscape of security, most of the opportunities are created by simple human error. Not handling passwords correctly, not setting strong passwords, taking advantage of going to a phishing site, if you will, or downloading infected malware. In fact, during the pandemic, we actually saw more infected malware as parents tried to help their children with home education and all of these things. Many of those education packages, frankly, were infected. So what we recommend is a strong framework, and furthermore, we recommend that you pair that with a zero-trust IT architecture, so that your CISO and your CIO have this framework, if you will, for how they collaborate, and that their roles are key, but yet that collaboration is very strong and tight.
And how do we really keep data safe with this transition to hybrid cloud, especially knowing that this is a really heavily regulated environment?
Well, I really believe it fundamentally starts with innovation and the realization that when you go to a hybrid cloud architecture, and to be clear what I said about IBM, we are a hybrid cloud organization. There's nothing that runs for IBM that's not monitored regardless of what cloud it's running on. Whether it's running on Azure or running on Amazon or running on IBM Cloud, or whether it's running on internally, everything is monitored in that event infrastructure. But one of the fundamental aspects you have to have in your IT architecture is something called trusted compute. So in a hybrid cloud architecture, making sure that infrastructure is trusted compute, which means that it's tamper-proofed, even from insider threats, so that your system administrators cannot get access to systems and create havoc, if you will. That you've employed the state-of-the-art data encryption. And so that's why we've invested so much time in innovation of data encryption and encryption at scale. Our newest processor, called the Telum processor, can allow us to process 19 billion encrypted transactions per day, heavily used around the world as many organizations start to deploy this technology. But you see that in the architectures of many of these trusted compute environments. Another key, and we've invested in quantum safe algorithms as well. Because as quantum computers mature, and we certainly hope they do because it's a big business venture for us at IBM, is that the quantum computers will be able to break the encryption algorithms that we have today. It's really about data, making your data safe for the future. Data lives a long time. There are organizations attempting to hoover up all the data in the world, so it is really important that we start to employ these advanced algorithms as well. Another key aspect is ransomware. I remember the day the Colonial Pipeline was attacked, and I did go out and get gasoline because I run the CISO office at IBM. And I knew that the pipeline would likely be down for a week, which is what we typically see with a ransomware attack. So one of the other aspects is data protection. How are you providing data resiliency? Do you have a data strategy that allows you to bring that data back more quickly as opposed to days and weeks? Do you have a strategy that allows you to bring it back in possibly minutes and hours? And often this is a lot of data, right? So data resiliency is a key aspect. And the last thing I would touch upon is this idea of regulatory, being ready for regulatory posture, if you will, compliance. We know that security and data privacy and compliance are all woven into this complicated fabric. It's important that you have an architecture that allows you to address that. And so in our IBM cloud, our financial services cloud, we've certainly built that into the fabric of what we provide there. It's a very fundamental focus of ours to make sure we have that kind of capability out of the box for our clients.
And Jamie, if you have this cyber-aware infrastructure in place, what then do you need to respond to these day-to-day threats that you're going to get?
I would say, I've talked a little bit about the life of cyber operations, which I got to tell you, it's fascinating. There's going to be a job for about 500,000 people in the future at the rate and pace we're going. And I've talked a little bit about the infrastructure. I think the other thing that's fundamentally important for us as stakeholders here is we need to work together, right? The industry has to come together to solve these problems. We have to recognize that investment and innovation does not come free, but that innovation is what's going to give us the power to overcome these challenges, to modernize our architectures, but yet keep ourselves safe. And to do that, it's going to require forums. So for instance, I am the board chair for the Open SSF governing body at the Linux Foundation, and what the Open SSF is focused on is securing open source software. Log4j was open source software. It was used, everybody used Log4j. And I can't tell you, it ruined our holidays last year dealing with Log4j because we had to patch all of these products, and many of you wanted to talk to us about what products they needed to patch. But what this means is open source security is really fundamentally important for us as an industry, as users. We cannot take this for granted. And so we're working with the industry leaders there. There's about 34 organizations. We've met with the White House twice, actually. We're focused on a number of key things. Education, you spoke about that earlier in the workforce panel. We need to increase the aperture of those that can become cyber experts and security experts. There's going to be so much opportunity for so many individuals here in the United States and around the world. We need to further refine something that's called this software bill of materials. It's the DNA of the software, so that we know what the software contains. We are able to understand what needs to be patched, and if we're providers of software, we can be more effective in our patching. And of course, we must provide state-of-the-art tools, both from a cyber perspective and a DevSecOps perspective, to these open source organizations so that they can be effective. And so we think all of these tenets are very, very important. And particularly if you look at automation today, there's not enough automation, and you all talked about that in terms of the workforce earlier on that panel. Automation is the king. Think about it. I own factories for IBM. Factories are very automated. You don't just run a factory without an extreme amount of automation, or you're going to lose a lot of money. But in the world of software, we don't think of software in the same way we think of a factory. But I would submit that more of our development organizations need to be factories. And so that's what we're really doing in terms of the collaboration that we're doing at the Linux Foundation. We have a lot of friends and family. I'm working with Microsoft and Google and Amazon and Citi, and Capital One just joined, and I'm going to miss a lot of others. GitHub, Red Hat, of course, who is a close friend with IBM, obviously, but a really good group of organizations there working together to understand how we can make the landscape better. So.
Fantastic. And our last 30 seconds together, Jamie, I think you talked us through a lot of things that are scary about your job day to day. What makes you most excited to go to work and do this work?
Well, I have had the pleasure of just managing so many odd things, and they all come together in this kind of interesting Petri dish that has allowed me to understand, I think, the landscape of security more, because I also own the supply chain, which has been quite a interesting journey in the last 2 years. I think we've all, I've lost some hair. You maybe can't tell that, but I used to have black hair. But I would say coming in every day, being a part of an organization that's driving innovation, that is truly powering the best organizations around the world, and you know what clients are doing with your technology, and you feel like you're providing technology, but you're providing technology that allows them to be safe and allows them to really get good business results, is truly the most rewarding part of this job. So I'm really pleased to be here to meet with all of you and to have further conversations.
Fantastic. Jamie, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll pass it back to Janet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
This next discussion is a real treat for me because along with you, I get to learn some insights about my own company. This is Sean Edwards, Bloomberg's Chief Technology Officer. I know many people think of Bloomberg as a financial company. It's actually a tech company. And Sean manages a vast global technology infrastructure, delivering real-time data, information, news around the globe. We're going to talk about how he manages this, and also how he also supports novel tech solutions to grow within the company. So Sean, let me begin with this. Bloomberg prides itself on being a very customer-centric company. We tend to want to over-deliver to the customer, even giving them things that they did not know they needed. What sort of innovations recently have impacted and augmented customer satisfaction?
Oh, I mean, lots. We invested in machine learning years ago. We did it in a very, very focused way on our news product. How to categorize news, how to link things, how to do entity extraction, and understand how our users are using it, and give them tools within the terminal to deal with the vast flow of information, right? And so there's kind of this big theme that Bloomberg, when they started, was all about getting more data and more information for our users, and that was the name of the game for the first, 15 years. The company's 40 years old now. Now we kind of think about the problem of there's too much information for human beings doing. So a lot of what we're focusing on is sifting through that information and alerting people to what they need, and also using ML to do really sophisticated natural language search and the terminal. So my dream is that you can walk up the terminal and ask any question and get the answer. We're not quite there yet, but you can ask questions in natural language, and our customers are responding very positively to that.
Well, speaking of that, as I mentioned in the first panel, sometimes the best tech when it comes to customers is hidden. It's running there, it's complex, but the customer doesn't feel a jolt or a disruption. It runs almost seamlessly. So how do you do these things? How do you figure out what you need to add, say, to the terminal to make things run so seamlessly?
That's a big question. That question could take up the rest of the time. But it's essentially our job. I think it's something that goes back to the very beginning of of Bloomberg, which is really to be really close to our customers. To walk their floors. Our salespeople are visiting our customers every day. Technologists go and talk to our customers. And so it's really about understanding the problem, right? First and foremost, it's about understanding what problems we're solving. We don't just build things and throw it out, and we're not trying to catch eyeballs. And it's a very different business. It's very directed. And so we are thinking about what problems we're solving, and that essentially everything else comes from that. And so it's a pretty straightforward formula, hard to do.
Yeah, in one of our earlier conversations, you said you actually have far more good ideas than you can possibly work on. So how do you choose your ideas?
There's no formula. It is really about working with a number of key stakeholders and leaders in the firm. It's working with our sales department. It's working with our product managers. It's engineering. And it is experience, good taste, all those kinds of things. We do a lot of evaluation, a lot of proof of concepts. My team actually their job is to set the technology direction for the company. And we wear two hats. One is to build proof of concepts, do research, hands-on research with people internally, externally. And that is, then our other hat is to take those ideas and build products out of them. And so we're really about focusing on bridging the gap between research and product. We do a lot of experimentation to see if even an idea is even viable. The real thing is we really built this culture around failing fast. We do try a lot of things. Fail fast, try, experiment, get things out to market very quickly, and go from there. And so we're not really wedded to these very long, big massive projects. We end up doing very big, massive things, but we do them in really bite-sized pieces. That makes sense.
Bloomberg has a really, I will say, I consider a magical culture. We have our snacks, of course, but we also tend to move really fast on things, and it has changed me, being generally a Luddite who is slow to adopt. I want to ask you the question that we've asked some of our other panelists about how you create this culture within your company, within your workforce, so that you're primed to move fast and to spring forth with ideas and then act on them fast, as you say, even fail fast. How do you create that culture?
Well, first of all, I think it's a lot of what I do is carrying on the innovation, the culture of innovation that Mike Bloomberg started with his co-founders, Tom Secunda, who I work very closely with, and two others. They built this idea that of the open space, and Mike is very famous for bringing that to City Hall. That's a physical incarnation of the idea that we are really a flat organization. Anybody can come up with a good idea. Anybody can pitch the idea. They do. A lot of people come up and say, yeah, Sean, I have this really good idea. Let's go get coffee. I drink way too much coffee. And we, there's no one group responsible for innovation. That's what Mike said. Everybody's job is everybody is responsible for innovation, and it comes in different forms. And so, what our job is to create that culture of innovation. What does that mean? It's really the environment. It really means that we really promote the idea of people speaking up, pitching their ideas in. But aside from that, it's about building these cross-functional teams. We are not siloed at Bloomberg. Of course, there's management structure and all that stuff. But when we work on things, we're typically taking people from multiple departments. And so, when we're doing it, when we're at our best, we're at the whiteboard with, a UX designer, with a person who was a previous trader or a portfolio manager at some firm. We have an ML engineer. We have somebody who's a data expert from our global data team. We have linguists. We have, all sorts of backgrounds, and we're at the whiteboard, and we're designing solutions. And so that hierarchy in terms of the management structure, it's imperative that it doesn't get in the way. Mm-hmm. And so that culture of being able to be very nimble, create this cross-disciplinary teams, because quite frankly, some of the best ideas come from the cross-fertilization of disciplines. We don't just talk about diversity. It's really finding those diverse thoughts, people with different backgrounds, different schools, growing up in different areas. That is super key to us, and that's something I'm passionate about. And I think that formula has worked. And there's lots of other things that go along with it, but and it's also, aside from that, I think one thing that's often missing is really and it's kind of my job and other leaders' job, is to keep it focused on solving the problems of our customers are doing. And so we don't do self-driving cars. We don't do something that's really far from the mission. We innovate, but it's kind of innovating adjacent to the things we're doing. We are inventing constantly, but it's really towards solving a problem. And that's what we keep in mind.
But we know that innovation is difficult. It's also costly. I want to dig into those terms of failing fast. How do you, while trying to maintain this culture of let's spring after these great ideas, but how do you avoid creating those zero ROI projects, the ones that are costly in time and money?
We're really allergic to those at Bloomberg. Part of what we have done is, create some discipline around this. And as we build these proof of concepts, we actually time box them. We have check-ins, I can think back to some of the recent work that we did to experiment with using machine learning to build bond pricing. People, if anybody knows about finance here, it's when you go and look at what's the price of a IBM stock, it's listed by one of the exchanges. But for a bond, there's no exchange. It's over the counter. And often some of these bonds that somebody's not trading them for a while. And so how do you do that? Well, you can use a rules engine and everything else, but the state of the art is to use machine learning, these big neural nets that borrow information from other bonds that are issued by that company. Companies are like them. What's happening in the industry, in their sector, what's happening with interest rate curves, all this stuff. And when the team first proposed that a while ago, we said, that's a great idea. That's one of those things that went on the backlog. We said, is it? Do we have the data? Is it something we think is achievable? Do we have the talent? Do we have the domain experts in there in the room? And so we put together this team. And we said, OK, we want you to run some experiments. First and foremost, tell us if we actually have all the data we need to run an experiment and what would you do? And actually show us some really initial sketches, 1 month. Okay? And they come back and they report. And then we have a go, no-go decision. And we say, OK, let's do it again for another month. And the whole thing, just the proof of concept, took very crude, by the way, very crude proof of concept, really took 3 months. Now, from that, we spawned a whole initiative, and it is quite involved, and it is quite massive. And lots of other things, branched out of it. We're doing a research, project right now, which is really about transparency. Explainability. You have this price, you generated this price with this neural net. What does that mean? We have another work that we're doing a lot of work in alt data. And how do you have differential privacy? That's a whole academic work. We're working with academics in the world. But we have to say, is this viable? If it is, we'll take it to the next level, and we could build a product out of it. And so that's kind of the idea of time boxing, and that's the idea of failing fast, but having discipline around all of that.
And it's funny because what you're saying now actually really goes back to the founding of Bloomberg, which is to make valid, real data, durable data, reliable data available to many people at the same time and to democratize that availability of the information. You brought up machine learning. So can I ask you about the impact of AI, how it figures into your tech strategies right now?
Yeah. I like to say that, I know I always say this, but it's probably corny by now, but I like to say the tech industry has way more fads than the fashion industry. So I might, half of my job is keeping stuff out and helping decide what comes in. And machine learning is clearly something that, if you look back, 10 years ago, it was probably overhyped. 8 years ago, it became usable. 5 years ago, it became widely usable on many things. Now it's something that we're expanding. So along the way, we kept it focused. You give the new shiny toy to the engineering department, they're going to go off and use every AI for things that they shouldn't be using AI. So it has to be disciplined. We worked in our news department. AI is fundamental to our global data department. So we have a division called Global Data, thousands of people whose job is to source data into Bloomberg. And so they get feeds, they used to get faxes. I don't think we have fax anymore, maybe they do. And they used to be data clerks. When the company started, it was literally people looking at a piece of paper or a screen and typing into another screen. And that's how we got data into our databases. And then they built rules engines, and they automated things, but it was really automating what that human being was doing. Now, we have progressed so much. We have thousands upon thousands of machine learning models doing specific tasks. For instance, earning report comes out. IBM announces earnings. We have a machine learning task that understands that document, extracts that number, does lots and lots of validation. Is this within the expected range? Did we multiply by 100 by mistake? Is there something wrong? Lots and lots of validation, pushes it into the system, and it appears to our customers in milliseconds. That's superhuman speed, And so what used to take a very long time is taken faster and more accurate. We worked with academia to do table understanding. You have a table in a PDF document, HTML. It's actually really hard. It was an unsolved problem. We worked with a number of academics on this, and we built models and got better. We now can take a look at a table, which is easy for a human being to look at, which, we look at a number, we can look up and see the columns and spanning headers, we can see the rows. We can even read the footnote that says units are in millions, right? We've trained models to do exactly that, and so now we're extracting data from tables and even charts. And so we have taken those users, so those employees who were data entry clerks, and now we've had them. They're giving feedback to our models. Yeah. They're saying where it gets wrong. Human in loop computation is extremely important for us. And so we've then transitioned to other products. I mentioned, bond pricing. Now it feels like we're like opening the floodgates. There's many, many uses for machine learning. Our investment in building the right team, the right technology, we run a lot of our own data centers, we built our own data science platform. It was a massive investment, but it's paying off tremendously.
And by the way, we should note, with this use of automation, not only does it get the information to the investors, to the community reading Bloomberg faster, but it also removes those soul-crushing jobs that we've heard about, which is manually.
In that department, that was never about reducing headcount. In fact, that department's been growing. We're actually training people to say, no, you're going to be the person who's doing, you're the subject matter expert. We're taking most of the, toilsome, grungy, kind of data entry work, and we're making you thinking. You're thinking about the data. What's an acceptable value? How do we do validation? How do we give feedback to the model? How do we work with the machine learning engineers? And just to touch on this one point, we're at the next set of things, next set of investments. My team is doing research, and we're building a large language model. Everybody's heard of OpenAI, GPT-3. We're probably one of the few companies that are building one. And what's unique about it? Why are we building it? We're not doing the fundamental neural net design, but what we have is the ability to build, to use unique data sources. Most of the companies who are building it out there are using OpenCrawl, Wikipedia, et cetera. And so we're taking all of that, but we're laying around a huge corpus of our new financial news, a huge corpus of these earnings reports, the transcripts where the CEOs are talking. We're teaching this large language model financial speak. We already have versions of it. I mean, this is an area where I will have to say, even though we run our own data centers, this is an area where we use the public cloud. Spent already $8 million this year in one of the public clouds just to do this training on the large language models. Why? Because we built the smaller versions of it. We used it for internal tasks to do annotations, to train our other models, and we're seeing tremendous value out of it. And then we're going to go forward, and we keep seeing that. So I think there's like incredible amount of ideas that are coming out of here. That's where it comes down to. There's more good ideas than we can actually work on. I'm so excited about this area.
Sean, how is Bloomberg engaging with the open source community and outside developers in general? Because those are needed when you're talking about these massive projects.
Yeah. Some years ago, when I joined, I'm actually Bloomberg, I'm going to be at Bloomberg 20 years in April. When I joined,
that means he has a lot of lucite cubes on his desk, in case you don't know.
We get a little pillar of cubes when we hit a certain time. And we didn't use open source software. We didn't go to conferences. But what changed a little bit years later was the emergence of high quality web scale software that we could use. But it was never quite right for us. We have certain latency requirements that of the big web companies don't have. We have different needs, and so we had to learn how to participate. And so the CTO office runs the open source program at Bloomberg, and we choose very carefully what we're going to participate in. And it has been phenomenal. We are an open source first company. We have been able to retain our engineers because they feel it's a chance to give back. It is a core of so much of our systems, whenever you're thinking about, whether it's Kubernetes or Kafka or all sorts of other things. This is an area where we have been able to kind of punch above our weight. And it's also a way for us to find talent. It's also a way for us to keep on top and really understand what's the state of the art out there.
Oftentimes at Bloomberg, we always hear we try to do the right thing as a company. When you're talking about deploying new technologies, when you're talking about aggregating data, it has to be done responsibly and ethically.
Yeah.
And this has created some new roles for you because you have to create bodies to make sure that things are being deployed correctly. So let's talk about, say, cloud governance with your teams.
Yeah, one of the first things we did, our journey into the public cloud was really driven by our customers. Our customers are getting rid of their data centers or at least creating these hybrid worlds where they're putting more of their workflows in the cloud. And so Bloomberg was the first company to put market data. I know it's actually counterintuitive, real-time market data, like streaming, low latency market data. But we work with some of the public cloud vendors, and we went one by one to actually make it work. And so we had to learn, okay, how do we put our assets up in the cloud? How do we deliver product in a cloud-native fashion? And the first thing we had to do was build a cloud governance team. And it incorporates our legal team, incorporates our risk team, it incorporates our cloud engineering team and our architects, our security team. It's a number of teams that had to come together because it is very easy to hurt yourself. It's very easy to take your data, put it in the cloud, and make it world readable. Oops. And so, there was a lot of very controlled kind of work one by one. As we got better at it, as we really understood it, as we started delivering product, we're onboarding more and more of our products for our customers in the public cloud. And we're doing a lot of advisory work for our customers to understand how to use these products. And so it's a very careful thing. Our customers' data is paramount to their privacy is paramount to what we do.
Yeah. I was always saying that, and this is why we get a lot of training every year, because we have to guard our data and what we're doing and also guard everyone else's, and they do it very efficiently. We have an interesting question that came in, and I'm going to actually answer it myself because I think I know this. Do you expect these algorithms would be able to replace journalists in the near future? I think they can replace, as Sean was saying, announcements, information, bites of information, but not journalists, because constantly at Bloomberg, you will read things that could only be thought up by a person.
Yeah, the way we say it, first of all, Bloomberg is one of the largest news organizations. We publish lots and lots of news. And it's about, don't quote me on this, a good percentage, say around a quarter, of our news stories are generated by a computer. And there's a lot of ML that's actually doing the alerts and the signal that kicks off the process, and lots of validation. And we have this kind of focused answers. And we generate those news stories. But you're right, those are facts.
Yeah.
They're really interesting facts. You can say a fact, and then it can give you context, and we get better and better at it. Our journalists are freed up to do the why.
Yeah.
Why did this happen? What's going on behind the scenes? And they do the hard thinking. We also use ML in a lot of our tools for the journalists. And so we collaborate with our teams, and we built these internal teams. So when they're writing a story, we're pushing to them on their screens all this contextual information.
Right.
And they're searching through all this corpus all automatically as they're writing. And so think about it as a super ability, like helper in writing your
Exactly, just like the washing machine frees up your time to maybe do other things. A quick example, I was doing one of these events with IBM Automation in Singapore. I took the time to interview a Boston startup that does water purification, recycling, to be a green company so there's not so much wastewater. Well, they extract minerals from water. They were able to extract lithium from water. This is a story that impacts climate, new energy, and also a water company, they said purification, has now become a mining company, a small Boston startup. But that's hard to connect the dots unless you see that there and look at them. Okay, we have one more minute. Didn't want to talk about me. A question facing all companies right now in very short order. What do you think are the big tech challenges that basically all companies across industries will be facing in the near future?
Talent. I think we're all faced with that, right? And it's a really war for talent. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough people with advanced degrees, et cetera. So that's always a challenge.
And any insights or advice that you can give to the executives?
Absolutely not, because I want to hire them. I'm not telling you what we do.
Yeah, I know it's hard.
Actually, the work we've done in open source, the work that Bloomberg Philanthropy does, it's a huge selling point, and it's part of the culture. And people come to us to work really, really hard, solve real interesting problems, see their work out in customers. But they also do it for all the other things that we do.
Yep. So. Being around smart people and unlimited, really excellent snacks. Sean, thank you very, very much. It's a real pleasure, and it was great to learn how our company runs.
Great.
Thank you so much. I told you things are going to move quickly. We are now down to our final session, and for that, we are going to look at how companies across all sectors are driving innovation with that cloud-first model for not only speed and agility, but even to meet sustainability goals and what they want to do better. We are lucky to be joined today by 4 executives to hear how they are creating modern architectures that encourage innovation without sacrificing security. This discussion will be led by my colleague Mandeep Singh, senior analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence and host of Tech Disruptors. Mandeep. Yeah.
Okay, how's everyone doing? Really excited to see a good turnout, and I couldn't have asked for a better panel to join me, so let me introduce them quickly. To my left is Carrie Jequith, Global Head of Product at Abaxx Technologies. Ashish Parmar, CIO at Tapestry. RF Martin, Chief Technology Officer at John Wiley Sons. And Mark Murphy, Head of Market Operations at Nasdaq. Welcome. Well, I thought about, what would be the best use of the 25 minutes that I have. And look, everyone at this point knows about cloud, public cloud. And I think more and more people are curious about what innings we are in. How much of a runway do we have? And maybe that's a good starting point for, just setting the stage. Carrie, do you want to talk about what's innings are you in with regards to your cloud migration? How much is cloud as a % of your overall IT spending?
Yeah, definitely. I love that question because the premise of it is that everyone in this room is not in cloud yet. And what no one realized, well, I think most of you, this is a very forward-thinking audience, so you already all know this. But what maybe some of the folks who are dialing in might not already know or might not quite have embraced is that you're already in cloud even if you don't already know it. All of your systems that you're working with in the enterprise right now are sitting, if they're not in cloud, they're connected to cloud. And anything that new that you're building it in cloud. So we're well into the cloud innings.
Ashish?
Sure. First of all, thank you. I did want to take 30 seconds. Tapestry, house of brands with 3 iconic brands, Coach, Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman, just so that you understand the context when I answer the question. We're 95% in cloud. We've embraced the cloud first and a hybrid cloud operating model. And proud to say 2 weeks ago, we actually hit a big milestone and we're 95% in there.
Arif?
Great. Thanks for this session here. We at Wiley work on research and career-connected education platforms, and we are about 80% in our own cloud, not counting the enterprise things that Carrie mentioned.
Okay, and Mark?
Great. So Nasdaq, we've been in the cloud now for more than 10 years, particularly with data access analytics. But exciting for us, coming this Monday, will be the first time that we've run an exchange workload, including the match engine, which is obviously a very performant and high throughput operation. That'll be going live on Monday with AWS Outpost. So we've been cloud forward for a number of years, and we're now, and it was announced last year at reInvent, that we'll be moving our markets, US markets, to the cloud, and we're pretty excited by that.
And so if I can piggyback on that, you said you've been in cloud for 10 years. Like, how have you gone about those migrating the workloads, and what is it that is still holding you back in terms of going all in on the cloud?
So I would say that we are all in right now. The question and the thought process right now is what is the right timing, what is the right pace, and that comes down to our clients and the regulators most importantly, which is why we've gone for an Outpost version of moving to the cloud for MRX, our US options exchange, which will go live on Monday. And what that allows us is to bring the cloud to our data center and bring those capabilities to ourselves and also to our clients.
Or if you said you're 80% into cloud, what's holding you back on that 20%? And do you have a time frame in terms of when you will be 100% on cloud?
I would doubt if you would be ever 100% in the cloud. What would happen is that most of the stuff that's not in the cloud would get retired before we switch over, right? Because some of these things are legacy applications, and and we don't really need to kind of migrate them, right? So what we are probably, I would say what's holding us back is mostly process, timing, investment, and talent that's needed to go through this transition.
So these are complex workloads that you're finding it hard to replicate?
Things that are not in the cloud, for example, back office financial systems, right? On older systems, on older technologies, that's not worth actually kind of taking to the cloud.
Got it. And I guess, Ashish, you said 95%. I'm curious, like, have you noticed a change in your IT spend as a result of being, so close to 100% on the cloud? Has it gone up? Has it gone down? Like, just any data that you can share.
Great question. I think, again, I'm a big believer context is important. So just journey back, 2.5 years ago, we announced an acceleration program with 3 key outcomes. One, consumer centricity, really everything that we were doing, make consumer the focus. Embrace digital first mindset and lean into data and analytics in all of our ways of working. And third, be a leaner and more responsive organization. So when you look at that, and now you look at the outcomes, the investment that has been done, and if I give you a data point, our journey began about 5 years ago, and over the last 5 years, we've invested $500 million in technology capabilities, bringing this to life. So, the spend has gone. At the same point, I'll say more than 33% of cost takeout has happened. We've acknowledged the elasticity and scale that's come through. So the spend has to be in contrast of the investment. And just one other data point I'll share is from an elasticity, scale, and growth standpoint, our digital business is 3x what it was 2.5 years ago. If you look back from a $600 million business to $2 billion today, representing close to 30% of our total business. When you look at customer acquisition, 15 million new customers just in North America alone, digitally coming into the brand over the last 2 years. So that's kind of speaking, hopefully gives you more texture to where the P&L and the investment's going.
Got it. And Carrie, I'm curious, like, are there any type of workloads you have found run better on public cloud than you were able to do, with your legacy environments?
So I'm coming in from having spent time in investment banking, building products in the investment banking space, to building digital products in the first gen of on-prem to cloud in the insurance tech space, to Abaxx, where we're building tools cloud first for hybrid cloud. Like, we are building on hybrid for hybrid. So I think one of the challenges that you see as you see companies migrate to cloud is you have to pull alongside of your existing. So you do see a spend kick out, and then you see it contract, right? Because you've pulled this new team alongside, you've built out, and then you've migrated and you contract. Each of the clouds right now has some specialty, something that works really well. So you'll see your data science teams maybe lean into one of the clouds over the others, or you'll see.
Which one are you leaning into?
You'll see. I will speak very thoughtfully about what I see in the market so that I don't get in trouble. But you'll see certain clouds sort of sing with particular domains, and you'll see teams lean into that.
I keep hearing how the GPU builds of clients have gone through the charts because, they want to build something in AI, but the public cloud isn't the most economical way. Wondering if anyone in the panel has that experience, especially, the higher end workloads.
I actually do have some experience in this. It's not a question of public cloud being the right tool or not, right? Because setting up GPUs in your own data center is just as costly, right? The point is, how do you use it? How do you kind of make sure that your use case is such that you're containing costs, also in addition to the operational needs that you have to run this, right? So when do you turn on the necessary capacity that you need? When do you turn it off? How do you really go about your deployment of software?
Well, you didn't have to worry about capacity and the meter running when you were running it on your own data center. So
exactly,
it's a change in mindset, I guess.
It's a change in mindset, and therefore the dependency is really how do you manage the cost of running the GPUs in it.
And I would just add to that, I mean, there's also an element of time horizon. It's very easy to look at costs in a near-term cycle, so 1, 2, 3 years. But it's also important to recognize that what the cloud provides and the emerging technologies that comes with the cloud is really important, particularly if you pair that with other unique capabilities. So at Nasdaq, working with AWS, we're bringing emerging technologies to our data center, to our clients, in proximity to our match engine, and that brings a unique set of capabilities both for us and for our clients. And then you think on top of that, where are we going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Will there be more R&D dollars going into this from the cloud providers? And how will that look in 5 years to be building custom GPU, for example, in comparison to the cloud providers?
And I guess, Ashish, since you've used cloud extensively and you had an accelerated migration of the infrastructure to public cloud, like how is the portability when it comes to using public cloud? Can you migrate the workloads easily? Do you always look for the lowest cost provider? How do you make those decisions?
Well, if it was easy, then everyone would be doing it, right? So it's not I think part of it goes back to what Mark said, or what's the outcome? Sometimes we index too much on just the cost or the investment. What's the outcome that we're trying to achieve? And for me, one of the things looking back, which was controversial when we publicly declared that we're going to be a multi-cloud, was, hey, isn't it easier, the notion of just having one? And there's always two sides to a coin. You could have split that story the other way, and today everyone's talking about multi-cloud. For us, the principle was around going back to the outcome. If it was about consumer centricity, and it was about being responsive and a leaner organization. What gives us the velocity? What gives us the scale to do it at a level where every interaction for us, the industry I come in from, is an interaction with the customer, consumer is one of delight, which warranted us to retrospectively look back and say, to Mark's point, is it an inflection point with a cost uptick, but in totality, I'm going to do a cost takeout. To your point about portability, it's not that overnight you're moving things. There is by design workloads that we have chosen on certain providers. There's geopolitical aspects to our business. We're in 27 countries. And then there's aspects within our capabilities, whether it may be our enterprise capabilities, which are on our GCP side. Then there's others on our advanced analytics, data science, which are on AWS. So we've deliberately done it that way. And then there's portability in some where we believe we should be able to move to whoever we want. The other the point I'll raise, and I'll offer others, there is a natural tension there. How do you enroll your ecosystem of partners to say, you compete outside, but you're coming into my house, and we're going to co-create something? And trust me, those conversations are pretty difficult, right? I mean, we have a lot of partners here, and they're all equal partners to me. But to sit down with them and say, you're equally important, but today we want this outcome as we look ahead. That's how our journey was. And look, it's better to be lucky than right, but we're both right now.
So I guess, Carrie, you mentioned hybrid cloud a few times. I mean, what is hybrid cloud? I guess I'm sure the audience wants to understand better. Like, what is your definition of hybrid cloud?
Yeah, when I think about hybrid cloud, I think about the ecosystems that we're all building within and that our teams are leveraging tooling in and connecting to. So we're coming out of a period of time where a cloud, even if it was an on-prem cloud, a self-hosted cloud, a self-managed cloud, was this sort of data vault that you could wrap a wall around and you could dig a moat around it and put alligators in it. And the hybrid cloud scenario happens when you start to realize that you really want to use the data. You want to punch holes in the walls, and you want to pipe data out and use it for your business, and you want to enrich the data inside that vault, and you want to co-create. So now you want to co-create with someone who maybe is in a vault that's a little bit different than yours. And to be able to do that, you have to sort of evolve how you think about this.
So do you have to go outside of the hyperscalers to really kind of implement multi-cloud or to co-create in your scenario, like a Snowflake, a layer on top of what you're doing at the infrastructure level?
It's the people, it's the platforms, it's the processes, it's the policies. All of this is only possible if you've got people that you're bringing together that are bilingual, that have a fluency in multiple clouds. So there was a period of time early in cloud where you could go, oh, I'm going to stand up a cloud team and they're all going to focus on one vertical. They're all going to be Azure team members. They're going to be specialists in this one cloud. You can't do that, right? So you really need someone who, even if they're not like an Azure specialist, they need to be able to order off the menu in the restaurant of Google, of AWS. And if you can't hire those bilingual team members, you got to grow them. So one way to do that is you bring your non-bilingual team and you collaborate with a bilingual team. Dr. Henna Karna, who's over, I think, at Google Cloud now, really someone to look at for that, for structuring teams that are two-prong strong, one-prong growth. She'll build these teams that are structured in that way, and then she rotates them. So she's building out fluency through collaboration and through project rotations.
Yeah, well, I'm curious if anyone else has a different experience when it comes to just using tools to kind of mine data or co-create, applications that span across legacy and cloud infrastructure.
I do. Fluency is very important, but usually people that are used to one cloud can pick up the skills very fast for the other clouds. Less of a problem. The answer in my mind is simple: data, data, data. Right? Being able to take data from one island to another island, be it in a hybrid island or part of a public cloud, and being able to make sense of this, right? Being able to deploy workloads to support peak data traffic periods, and when you don't need it, you switch back to a less capacity type of a situation to save on costs, for example. But it's all in the data, right? I mean, we have some use cases that are not daily, like Ashish's, as he was telling me during the before the start, but we have situations where I call it Google-like traffic, right? In a couple of days, we get that volume of traffic when all students come back to go to school, or they want to register online. And on those days, you really need to be able to throw a lot of extra capacity at this and make sure that you keep your data sanity. Yeah,
Mark, I want to come back to you. So can you trust public cloud for security and compliance, which is paramount for an exchange?
So I promise I'll answer that, but if I could just add to the last line of discussion, when we think about hybrid cloud, we think about almost a product vertical. So we operate technology for a number of exchanges around the world. Some of the largest exchanges around the world, even the ones that we don't run, operate on Nasdaq technology. And they're all, to your next question, they're all going to have different deployment needs, regarding their location and other requirements. So what we're building out is we're bringing cloud to our data center, as I mentioned. We're also investing with AWS to build out a private local zone for the financial markets in the same campus as our data center. And then we'll also leverage the region. So what you have there is a vertical of trade-offs and different experiences and different depth of capability in each of those locations, because you're matching the depth of capability with the signals coming off the match engine, the data coming off the match engine, which is what people want to respond to. So I think that's important to realize, and often you'll hear edge compute thrown into all of that. And I really do think that how we think about cloud today being in a hyperscaler or a region, I think over the next couple of years you'll start to see that blur and the capabilities start to move more locally towards the signals or the actors that are looking to leverage the cloud. So that's that one. And then the second question, I think it was around government and security and regulation.
Do you trust the public clouds to implement the security and the compliance that you need?
Yeah, absolutely. If you, back to R&D, if you think about where the cloud providers are today and what they see and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis, they really are dealing with a lot. So they have a lot of visibility, which they can help you with. So what we do is we have our level of security that we've always had and continue to have, and then we add to that the capabilities of the cloud providers to add another layer of security. So absolutely, we trust the public cloud.
And Ashish, let me come back to you. So just from a redundancy perspective, how do you think about, redundancy of infrastructure when it comes to cloud? Obviously, you're not maintaining your own data centers, but what is it that you're making sure that, your infrastructure is up and running if one of the clouds go down?
Well, that's why we've embraced the multi-cloud. But at the same point, I think the architecture is something that's being co-created with the providers that we've chosen. So it's not something that you do an afterthought. It's something that you're doing, going back to the comments that others have layered in. Security and the design of how do you build that resilience. I wouldn't even call it redundancy. I'd say resilience of ensuring that each of those interactions or transactions that has to go through is completed within the set thresholds that we've defined. But it's a pretty transparent conversation. Now, how do you want to then continue to throttle it back or forth by capabilities or region? That's something else that we've kind of continued to layer in.
And are there any tools that you're using from an observability perspective?
Yeah, I won't give plugs because I always get in trouble for that. But yes, we have. We've actually, and it's in the public domain who we've kind of used, but that has been a big unlock for us because the teams were spending a lot of time trying to bridge what ends up being inadvertently, it's the outcome that came through is silos. So how do you get rid of that silo or at least create some sort of cohesion that allows you to operate with less friction? So we are using a platform, and also we've been partnering with our providers to say, how do we continue to remove that friction? Because we're not going away from the operating model, at least what we've declared. Yeah. That doesn't mean we're going to change it, but for now, the goal is what must come true for us to continue to remove friction from it, and then ensure that all of our colleagues are set up for success. Because it's easy to say for all of us sitting here talking about fluency and other. I'll give you a data point. I've been with the organization now 22 years. I started off as an entry-level analyst in the same company through when we were just a single brand at Coach. So oftentimes I'll tell the team, look, I recognize what it takes to go from an analyst, but the job that is needed when you're on call. So I take that responsibility very seriously, say, how do we ensure that the friction is also being taken away from our colleagues and team members?
And cloud has helped you do
because
that.
it's not about, I can't show up to the consumer or customer unless I actually make the life of our team members a lot better.
Anything you want to add around the observability aspect of clouds?
There are many ways that you can do this. It should be really no different than if you had it on your own premises type environment, right? Anything that you do, the clouds give you some native capabilities, but you really need to add your own layer of security and privacy-related topics. Privacy, very important these days. You were talking about, how do you protect against cloud and disasters and stuff like this, but how do you protect against privacy data not crossing borders, right? There are some major shortcomings in today's cloud technologies in this area that still needs to be resolved.
I think that's what you see a difference in terms of process. The process of building has moved in terms of where we have touch points with our legal team, with our chief privacy officer, with our compliance team, with our data governance, with our data quality teams. There was a period of time where you would build, and you might be building multi-cloud, you might be building in a couple of different stacks, you'd be hooking different vaults up, and you would build, and toward the end of the build, you would call up legal and you say, hey, can I have you take a look at this? We've layered on the observability. We know what's happening now. Can you all come in a room and take a look and tell us that it's all good?
Or not even do that.
That is right now today. I think one of the biggest shifts I'm seeing is that you see those touch points not even more granular than an agile sprint. You see those touch points at research, user research, like. Are we asking questions? Are the data questions we're asking in user research, very top of the funnel? Are these appropriate to ask? Are these really meaningful? Are these going to drive value? Are we allowed to keep this? Are we allowed to collect this data? Should we? So you're seeing at the top of the funnel that collaboration and embedding of data governance, data quality, data privacy, data security, and then that's weaving in all the way through the product pipeline. Very different, I think, than maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, there is an audience question that I think we can get to. They're asking for some unexpected business or customer insights that you uncovered after moving to cloud. Anyone wants to take that?
The cloud bill.
Yeah.
I thought it was free.
One thing I would say here, and it was more delightful, and that is when you remove a lot of friction from your products, and I'm bundling this together deliberately, moving to the cloud, moving your technology to the cloud, updating your processes, making it easier for your clients to consume product. An amazing thing happens is you open yourself up to a whole set of new clients that you didn't even know that you didn't know. And I think that's truly exciting. We've seen that both on the exchange side, the data side, where we start to provide native cloud products, and then we have a whole new set of customers that we are able to have contact with and sell to and work with and co-develop with. So I think that's often underestimated, but it was very delightful for us that we experienced that, and that's a part of the reason that we're so bullish on the strategy that we have right now.
Mark makes a good point. In cases where we've had to actually enter new regions and new countries, it would have been impossible to really fire up through our own data center such capabilities, right? Because you have to be present on the ground in that country to be able to operate.
Yeah, so I'm now down to my last 5 minutes, and I want to end with a question that's common for all the panelists. Carrie, I'll start with you. What is it that you have not factored into your assumptions about cloud? I mean, all the things that we heard today were positive. Cloud is helping in terms of infrastructure, the resiliency. What is it that could go wrong with regards to pursuing this strategy? And I know that's not the base case, but curious if you can have an on-the-spot answer.
The things that go wrong with tech proper, tech as the universe of tech, are people. The people are what goes wrong.
Okay.
And it's why you're constantly looking to connect your teams and make sure that they have visibility into what they're working on. Because if you don't have communication cross-team, if your data privacy person doesn't know that you're putting data in a cloud in a region in the world that you're not allowed to, that's a people problem. Those two humans did not talk to each other. So yeah, for me, the things that you can't expect are generally the people.
Ashish?
I'll say just quickly, a headline would be governance. We've got a solid foundation, and you want to go at velocity and you want to accelerate, but at the same point in time, how do you balance what level of tension do you want to put into the system with governance? So managing that is going to be the key, and within that comes cost and other stuff, but I'll yield to the others.
Governance is a good word for it. I refer to this as people learn about the flexibility that they have with cloud and cloud technologies, they start getting more creative. But therefore, governance is a very good way of making sure that nobody goes overboard on things that they're not supposed to do on the cloud versus the things that they normally do.
Have you changed your plans since the time you had set an initial cloud strategy? Okay.
A few times, actually, right? Depending on what you learn from security incidents that affect global operations of the internet, right? You come back and modify your plans. Privacy is really kind of causing a lot of really interesting turns and twists into the governance. Cost, right? And managing the cost of the clouds is a big issue these days because, despite popular belief, it's not free.
Do you want more cloud providers?
No, I have a couple, and I think that's more than enough for me.
Mark?
Yeah, so maybe just I agree with everything said, absolutely. I would just say that without fantastic and world-class product management, without world-class engineers or best-in-class engineers, you're always going to have a tough time, whether you're operating on mainframe or cloud. It doesn't really matter. So it's really important to have the talent, both in the product and the engineering side of things. And then I think you really just have to push forward. And I'd say one thing is being timid about the cloud or being hesitant, I think is probably the worst situation to be in. People need to be experimenting and pushing forward, particularly to attract talent, which has been a reoccurring theme today.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night with regards to cloud strategy?
No, I honestly, I would say the near-term costs and managing that is always a challenge, particularly when it's difficult to communicate the vision and the strategy and the value that you expect to build. But I'm only excited. I think there's so many things that will occur, both opportunities and challenges in the future, that will allow us, with our strategy, to respond in a compressed time to market that'll give us a competitive advantage. So I'm excited by all those future opportunities that will occur.
Great. Well, that's all the time we had. I want to thank all my panelists for a wonderful discussion and hope you enjoyed it as well. And I will invite Janet back to the stage. Thank you all.
This brings to a close the program part of this evening. We hope you enjoyed all these conversations, that you learned something from them. We are grateful to all of our speakers and our moderators. And of course, thank you to our sponsor, IBM, for making this briefing possible. If you'd like more information about our sponsor, just please visit the Resources tab on the event website. And most of all, thank you for being such an engaged audience. We had terrific questions sent to us from around the world, virtually, and also from you here in the room. We really enjoyed interacting with you. If you want to see any of this briefing again, you can just go to BloombergLive.com and you can watch it on demand. And we hope that you take advantage of that. So now more fun begins. Please join us for cocktails and networking right outside this door to my right. Thank you.